Thanks for logging on to myfoxhurricane.com. So Colorado State came out yesterday and updated their forecast. Every month or so, they update that forecast. And the July numbers, it's promising. Doesn't mean a whole lot, but we saw that number come down a little bit. Initially, they were forecasting 17 named storms, 9 of those becoming hurricanes. And for major hurricanes, they dropped that number by 1. Down to 16 named storms, 8 hurricanes, and 3 of those becoming major hurricanes. Big part of the reason why is just a lot of the strong wind shear that we've been seeing across the Caribbean and the persistence that looks like it will continue for a bit longer as well. So we all know tropical systems, they don't like that strong wind shear, really inhibits the systems from developing. So that is certainly a limiting factor. Now, one thing that kind of keeps those numbers up to looking at more of a slightly above average season, because you do see those numbers are above the averages, is just anticipating we're not going into an El Nino. We're into more that neutral phase right now. So at least that supports the idea that we're still going to see activity. Remember, we're still early on in the season, so there's plenty of time to go in the hurricane season. Looking at those numbers compared to NOAA, which remember they put out their numbers right at the beginning of the season. They put out that range, 13 to 19 named storms. So CSU right in that middle of that range, 8 hurricanes compared to NOAA's 6 to 10. And for major hurricanes, they're right on that low end of what NOAA is at least forecasting the probability for major hurricanes. So where have we been so far? It's been pretty quiet, although the storms that we have had, they've been impactful with Chantal, bringing a lot of flooding across North Carolina. Just a reminder, shows you don't need that hurricane. You don't always need that major hurricane to cause some issues, and that's exactly what we saw with Barry. A lot of that moisture left over heading up towards Texas, and then with Chantal causing direct flooding in the Carolinas. So 3 named storms, no hurricanes, and no major hurricanes to date. Those are the names we've used on the list. Dexter, next name up on the list. Question is, when will Dexter happen? Still no certainty on that, but there's that strong wind shear across the Caribbean, and does look like that will continue at least for the next several days, really into next week, because we're just not seeing anything coming along that is going to be changing that significantly. We do see a lot of that dry Saharan dust, again with that big plume working its way across the Atlantic, pushing towards the Caribbean in our general direction. So as we head into this weekend, especially across South Florida, likely going to be dealing with at least some of that dust. You can watch the dust on our dust model, just tracking the motion of this. As we head into the weekend and into next week, you do see some of that affecting South Florida, but a big push of that right across the Caribbean into the Southern Gulf and over the Yucatan as we head into the early part of next week. And that's why when you look at that outlook, you're seeing that large swath of very dry air, drier than average across the Caribbean. Now, we are going to watch up into the Gulf of Mexico. This is that outlook from July 16th to the 22nd, so still a little ways off, but what we're highlighting here is just the idea that conditions are more favorable across the central and eastern Gulf in this time period. Not seeing any consensus whatsoever among any of the major computer models that anything's going to develop here. It's just an area that conditions look like they're more favorable, so we'll watch to see if anything does try and develop in that area. So look at the Fox model, because we've got that dry air. You have the big ridge of high pressure, the Bermuda high, nothing coming along, stays very quiet. Although, watch with some of these tropical waves. There's one right there starting to get a little bit more vigorous as we go into next week. Not seeing anything's going to happen with that, but that's something that we're going to have to start to watch as we go through the coming weeks. Maybe more of these waves starting to get a little bit stronger moving across the Atlantic, and that's an area where we have lighter wind shear, and as a lot of that dust starts to subside, these are areas that will start to become more favorable for development as we push towards August. So we'll keep you updated right here on myfoxhurricane.com.